The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I am not Ryan Kairalla, but it is still a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for tuning in on the medium of your choice, whether it's streaming online through volume.com, via Sirius XM on Slam Radio, or your podcast provider of choice. I'm actually Zach Sloan, covering for a globetrotting Ryan Kairalla, and I'm thrilled to be here today, and I'm especially thrilled to be bringing on one of my favorite people in all the Break the Business sphere of influence, somebody who I've been a fan of before I was a co-host, the fantastic Elisa Rock Doc.
Who, me? Hello. I'm sorry. I'm honored to be here with the artist behind the Break the Business, like funk.
That's just because you said no.
These
It could have very easily, like, you have a career that I have made no bones about on the show. I envy. I enjoy talking to you. I enjoy your expertise. I enjoy just the good vibes you bring. And speaking of good vibes, Doc, I gotta ask you, because you're in the video game world. What you been playing lately?
Oh gosh. So oddly enough, I was literally thinking about this when you mentioned that you were going to ask, and I was like, wait, what have I been playing? And then realizing that I've been mostly going back in to Battlefield 2042 a lot, which feels, I was like, this is going to be very odd to say, but I've been playing a lot of Battlefield 2042 lately. And it's weird because, like, if anybody at EA and DICE are listening, turn your radios off. You didn't hear this, but we found a couple of multiplayer servers that have enough bots in them. Basically, it's like 128 player server, mostly bots. And usually, because we have silly musician schedules, we can basically hop on this multiplayer server, be the only two actual people in the server, and farm a lot of experience for our weapons and attachments and stuff. So once we discovered this and realized that we didn't have to deal with being griefed by people in the process, that's pretty much what we've been doing a lot. I've also been shepherding Evan through his playthrough of Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I played it already, and I basically have, I don't know if anybody out there uses Notion or any other similar database type software. I've basically made a Notion board where it has every region, and within every region, it has every shrine. And when you click on every shrine, it has a link to the walkthrough for that shrine. So basically, I have an entire thing built to essentially be his, like, second screen experience, his Nintendo Power in the flesh. So that's been really, really fun. Especially because he plays completely differently than I do, and he discovers things in different ways, and the kinds of shenanigans he gets into and building and problem solving and stuff. It's hilarious. It's basically, I get to watch my own private Let's Play and just giggle the whole time.
Nintendo Power in the flesh is one of my favorite things I've ever heard anybody say. That speaks to my heart when I first started playing video games and needing these things to get through them. So I appreciate that. Now explain to me, because I'm a bit of a noob at this. When we're talking about a server that is populated with bots, how does that work? I haven't experienced this.
Yeah, sure. So basically, relatively sophisticated AI built in enough so that they're actually pretty aggressive. So imagine just, it's the way that Evan describes it, because it is pretty much just like 126 bots and us. It's two teams, 64 and 64, and it's us and 62 bots versus a team of 64 bots. And it's wild the way that they're programmed. They can get in vehicles, they'll drive your vehicle for you. But basically it's just a lot of cannon fodder with which to build experience. And usually I imagine these kinds of things are not necessarily sanctioned by Electronic Arts, because it is such an easy way to farm experience and is not necessarily living within the artistic intent of the developers, to be able to just mow down all of these folks and farm experience. But damn it, we are having fun with your video game, folks. And this is just how we're having fun.
Well, that's an interesting point, and I would like to mention before we get into our first big topic of the day that we have a fantastic guest today. We have Frank Handy, the National Chair of the Association of Independent Music Publishers, that we'll get to on the second half of the show.
Yay.
But now, as you're talking about these servers and games that are populated with bots, what about older games? Games that maybe no longer have the player base to support, but people still love. What happens to those servers?
Well, as somebody with experience on kind of both sides of the fence a little bit with a game like that, there's a game that I once loved, that was made by a team called Vicarious Visions that I believe no longer exists and has probably been bought, sold, and renamed the house down to something like a shell of its former being. And they made a game called Blur. Way back in the day, probably dating myself here. I think I played it on Xbox 360. That's kind of how old it was, but it was basically adult Mario Kart. It was very cool, kind of cyberpunk racing.
This looks awesome,
isn't it? Everybody go look up Blur. And then we're gonna start a petition to get this game back, because there's power-ups that you can basically throw at people. There's ways that you could customize your car. It was really cool and really stylish, and it's gone. And I'm mad. And I'm mad about it.
Well,
Yeah.
what if I told you that in Europe there's currently a petition that is about, I think needs to be wrapped up by the end of the month, trying to keep things like that from happening, essentially requesting that the EU require that video game developers keep these games going. We don't know how long, but ostensibly forever. Is that something? Oh, thank you, producer Lauren, as I segue in with no real transition. Basically, it's called the Stop Killing Games movement. It's been going on for about a year. And the broad strokes of it are that sometimes video games phase out and the publishers or the developers or the owners, the terminology better than I do, find it no longer profitable to keep these servers up. And so they kill them, which sucks if you're among the people who still want to play the games. Doc, do you have any thoughts on this particular initiative?
Boy, it's complicated. That's the new sounder. It is so complicated because on the one hand, there is the academic in me, the gamer in me that says when a game is just summarily pulled off the shelves, especially when it does have a single player experience attached somewhat, and it's maybe even not just a multiplayer experience, when a game that you paid money for evaporates, and it basically it's symptomatic of all sorts of things where it's like you really have no ownership over a lot of things that you buy nowadays. It sucks in a sort of a games preservation and like art and cultural preservation kind of standpoint, like we're losing recipes by losing a lot of this like institutional knowledge. Like think of and I think like the Video Game History Foundation is trying to do their best to sort of almost make a kind of like Criterion collection closet of games, and trying to preserve as much of the history of this still kind of young medium as best as possible. So on the one hand, I'm like, yeah, I bought a thing and I should still be able to use that thing in perpetuity. I bought my gold cartridge Zelda in 1986. I should still be able to play that thing that I bought, that I own, for digital goods, and especially things that are games as a service in a subscription model that are hosted in online servers. That gets a lot more complicated. Because servers require support. Servers are expensive to maintain. These are oftentimes business decisions where teams have to get put from one team on to the next game. And at some point, that kind of has to move on, but at what cost? It doesn't feel like there's a very, very good. On the one hand, I don't think that there is necessarily a good technical solution for how to realistically make this happen, even if people wanted it to happen, which in the hands of corporate overlords that maybe only want to see number go up, and profitability, and there is no ROI and no amount of, but the community is going to maybe sway these folks into actually keeping these things alive.
Well, and one of the things that has come up, and I've had conversations with friends and just people who are not in the industries of independent creation, that they were dumbfounded when they canceled their Spotify subscription that they didn't get to keep that music. And
oh boy, oh
yeah, and I had to explain to them, like, well, you never owned that.
yeah.
And then I'm looking at, where do I play most of my video games? Steam, right?
Ooh.
If Steam goes away, I am out of luck, right? And so I think there is this push-pull of, like, already there's this model of games where you don't really own it. Like, my favorite game of all time, I'm gonna date. You thought you dated yourself. I'm gonna
Oh.
date myself. Not as bad as you, but
Hmm.
you talk about a Zelda. The original Baldur's Gate
Oh,
from, I think,
wow.
99 was like one of the first games I really got into. I still have the discs somewhere. Now, do I have a computer that could play them? Probably not. But I own it, right? If Steam goes away, Baldur's Gate 3 to me is just gone. I have to purchase it again. That would be a bummer. But Baldur's Gate 3, as you pointed out, is really a single player experience. What about those games that have this online component? Is there a historical reason to make sure they keep going? What about the profitability of the companies? If we tell companies, you have to keep this thing going on for however long, does that mean that they're just not going to invest in those types of games anymore? You've been in the industry. What are your thoughts on the mindset of companies as they're trying to navigate this new potential world?
Gosh, I highly, just like the cynical side of me suggests that this is going to peter out, in a sense that, I think it's, well, there's a bunch of stuff swirling around vis-a-vis where it is that the game industry could possibly be heading, because it does feel like it is at a little bit of a kind of like a kind of crisis point almost, as sort of pandemic bumps in sales have now flattened and often decreased because of the economy nowadays and people going back to work and not having as much free time, etc. Now we're seeing these kinds of waves of layoffs, and I highly doubt that, in a world especially where a lot of companies are being pushed to be more and more efficient, especially through the use of things like AI, and kind of pushing that at the expense of the actual workforce, I highly doubt that preserving things that do not look as cute on the profit sheets of the shareholders are going to be a very big priority. It does, though, call into question whether, where it is that the game industry can sort of pivot, because these games as a service models, it is so much easier to put out a game these days. Some of the most popular games nowadays among streamers are like kind of not necessarily these kind of big AAA things that everybody's waiting for. It almost feels like GTA 6 is like the last of a dying breed of these big budget, huge AAA video games that are going to be this kind of like encompassed thing. I don't know. It feels like a relic of a bygone era, but then they're also expecting it to do these huge gangbuster numbers. I don't know that there is that sense of self-preservation from a lot of the folks that make these decisions. Now, if you ask maybe like developers and artists and people who want examples of their portfolio to be available, especially as they need examples of their work to stay alive, makes me think of journalists who lose all of their work as soon as a website gets bought and shut down with no control over their own work. It is going to be interesting to see, like from the consumer side, a lot of times it may just be like hey, video games are kind of more difficult than this in terms of keeping a multiplayer server alive and all of that stuff. But also you're just going to have to deal with the fact that we're going to take your money and you're just going to have to like it because it's just how video games are now. An uprising from the community, I don't know how well that's going to work. It would be interesting to see if any actual like developers and artists can join this fight. And then I think maybe that is maybe how it would have legs.
Well, and one thing you brought up that I think is really interesting, and I had never thought this, and this is why, just behind Inside Baseball here, I had a whole slew of topics that I wanted to talk about tonight, and then I saw you were the co-host, and I thought, no, I want to talk about these things that are in your expertise. I hadn't thought about that. We're seeing more and more indie game developers produce great stuff. And I'm a dad now, I don't have time. Like, I love Baldur's Gate 3. I really do. I don't have time to sink hundreds of hours into a game like I used to. But these indie developers who are spending their time making smaller, more digestible, easy to play, fun, great games with fantastic stories are like right in my wheelhouse for what I can do. So maybe the takeaway for this is if you're an indie developer, maybe now is the time to really strike, because it feels like sometimes the AAAs are really irritating their audience.
And like shooting yourselves in the foot for no reason. But that is a rant for a different time. But I do highly suggest not being super precious about the environments with which you play in. There is that sort of argument that like, hey, you play something like a Baldur's Gate, you get, sometimes hundreds of hours. And then they would take that down, and then somebody would be like, well, you have hundreds and hundreds of hours in the game. Isn't that enough? But
I think that's fair.
Like maybe almost treating it like as like a, luxury Alamo Draft House movie ticket or like an opera ticket, this sort of ephemeral live experience. It is going to be a very, very difficult thing to train a certain generation of gamers to accept the ephemera of things that they've spent so much money on and sunk so much time in.
As much as it pains me, I think you're making a lot of great points, and I don't know if the answer is on the horizon, but we're going to keep you posted on Break the Business. Now I want to transition to something else that you know about.
Ooh.
And that's releasing cover songs.
Ah.
And today in my email, I received, because I'm on the Bandzoogle mailing list, I received an article that they sent called 5 Easy Hacks to Make Your Cover Songs Stand Out.
Oh.
And I wanted to bounce some of these off of you, because I know you've done a little bit of this in your day. Will you kind of give us some background on your experience with cover songs?
Sure. So when I started as a musician, I wrote my original stuff, but a lot of the times a Starbucks isn't necessarily going to hire you and your high school boyfriend to play acoustic originals of very, very angry and angsty songs that you wrote when you were a teenager. Sometimes they do want to hear, Stay by Lisa Loeb and just vibe. So I have to learn some covers. I'm back in my day, I did sort of struggle with the kind of like artistic integrity of doing covers.
Me too.
Instead of doing originals. But, there is something to starting to play a song and then seeing somebody's face just light up because I love that song. Oh my God. It's very few feelings like it, so I highly recommend it. Releasing cover songs, it is definitely a difficult thing because I am a huge proponent of making sure that the artist gets their due. And gets their licensing for said cover song and everything. So I've only done it once because, hey, I'm an independent artist, and do I want to pay a licensing fee or not? So I've released cover songs. I perform cover songs on Twitch and also out in the wild as part of cover bands and stuff. But I think the idea of performing cover songs, if you haven't yourself considered it, I think it's a really, really good way of introducing your audience to what kinds of stuff your original music has to offer.
Yeah.
But I want to know what I could have done better. I'm ready to take notes.
Well, as I was reading this, because I've released only one cover. I've released 3 albums of my own, and I've released one cover that was Fall Out Boy's "Sugar We're Going Down."
Yeah,
because I just liked that song and I thought it would be
it's
fun.
a great song.
And one thing I love about cover songs is that if you're in a creative lull, it can be a good way to help break out of that.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure your cover stands out. So here are a few tips that Van
Please.
Zugel pitched. And I would recommend reading the entire article because we're not going to get into the nitty gritty here. But one of the first things was playing with the rhythm. Oh, thank you, producer Lauren, for putting that up. Playing with the rhythm and the groove. One thing that bothers me is when I hear a cover song and it is, now Taylor Swift notwithstanding, because she did her own material, but when somebody covers a song and it's essentially note for note the original, at that point I could have and probably would prefer to just listen to the original. A great example that I came across this morning when I was sort of diving into this is, do you remember the band Nonpoint?
Oh, yes.
Have you heard their version of When Doves Cry by Prince?
I have not.
It is awesome because they basically took When Doves Cry, changed the groove completely, made it a new metal song, and it kicks. I'm not going to curse because I try to behave myself. Producer Lauren has put in the chat "Me First" and the Gimme Gimmes, which is actually on my list of things to talk about next. Right? Me First and the Gimme Gimmes do a great job of this, taking incredible songs in their own right, changing the rhythm, changing the groove, changing the genre.
Yes.
Can you think of, off the top of your head, and I'm putting you on the spot, of any examples of this that you have either seen or that you would like to see?
Fully. Actually, one of the things that one of the bands that I'm kind of in, we haven't been booked in a minute, but so I'm saying I'm still in it. We were just in a hiatus at the moment.
Come to Colorado, we'll do a show together.
Yeah, there you go. One of the cover bands that I was in was playing in a kind of a speakeasy, kind of loungy kind of environment. So what we ended up doing was doing covers in a kind of like loungy bossa nova way. So one of the songs that we did was the Cardigans' "Love Fool," but we did it as a bossa nova. And it's almost there already. Like if you kind of think about that song, you're like, oh yeah, I could see it. But when you actually lean into it and do the full transformation, people really dug it because they're like, wait a minute, oh yeah. And that is a great thing. See if you can do it in another kind of genre that also kind of plays with the rhythm, and you'll surprise yourself.
Well, I think that leads into another sort of the next group. There's really that from the article, and the next 4 tips all sort of fold into, I think, a big umbrella of messing with the tonality of the song, right? Changing the scale, right? Using some chord substitutions, using a different mode, for instance, which I think can be really interesting, but you got to be careful because sometimes that can go real wrong.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be trying to take Love Fool and like, let's move it to Phrygian. That's a music theory joke for you guys. But the last point I really liked, make your sound bigger by spacing things out. And this is where I think the medley or the mashup can really come in to play very, very well. I'm going to give you an example, and let me tell you if you think this is crazy. My band, one of our most requested things we do is a mashup of Eminem's "Lose Yourself." That we start off very much the guitar riff, and then we spread it out, we open it up, and then we fold it into Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Right? We play with the space, we play with the tempo, we play with the groove, but they fold into each other really well. Another thing we have done in a similar thing is we start off with Johnny Cash's Folsom Prison Blues. We all know it. As we go through it, we have a short breakdown, we spread things out, we bring it down, the drums come back in, and we segue into Beyonce's Texas Hold'em. From there, we kick it back and we finish out with the Johnny Cash song. Playing with that space, I can see it in the crowd. You see them sort of pulling back, getting confused, enjoying it. You can see that people who may not be a Johnny Cash fan love the Beyonce number, and by the end, they're all dancing together. I think that's a super useful way to sort of bring multiple things in to a live setting. But you got to be careful, because if you're going to do that on a recording, you're going to have to pay for all those licenses.
That is an excellent point.
And I know this because on the Dear Marcia album that we released a couple years ago, we did a version of Heartbreaker, the Pat Benatar song.
Yes.
That we wove in a heart song into the middle of it, just a riff.
Ooh.
So we had to pay for both licenses. Right.
But worth it, though. But sometimes the gag is worth the price, literally.
I mean, we've never regretted it.
There you go.
These are some things I think can help spice up some cover songs if you're looking at doing them. Before we go to our first break or our break of the show, Doctor, I got to know, what's a cover song you've always wanted to do, but you haven't done yet?
Oh, gosh. Madonna's Take a Bow.
Oh!
Written by Babyface, and that's why that song is so good.
That is a great one. All right. Let's take our first break of the evening, and we're going to come back, and we're going to be talking with our guest of the day. We have Frank Handy from the National Chair, the Association of Independent Music Publishers, on the other end. You guys stay tuned. It's going to be a great conversation.
Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show.
It is great to be back. Thanks for sticking with us through the break. Everybody, I'm so excited to be here with Elisa, the Rock Doc, and our guest, Frank Handy. Frank Handy is the National Chair of AIMP, the only nonprofit trade organization focused exclusively on independent music publishers. AIMP was created to support the independent publishers, not with lobbying or perks, but through practical education, hands-on business guidance, and a peer-driven community by giving them a voice. Let's give a warm Break the Business welcome. But first, we got to get his theme song for Frank Handy.
Okay, is it playing?
Nope.
Hello.
Oh,
Oh, well.
maybe since there's no Ryan, there's no theme song.
And
Frank,
look at that.
Great. Nice.
Yay!
love it.
Song, I love it.
So,
Hello. Hi, Zach.
Frank,
It's so good to see you guys.
it is so great to have you here. And I am always fascinated in publishing. I am always fascinated in the support for independent publishers specifically. Now, my understanding is that AIMP has a how do you say, a role in this. Would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the AIMP has been around for about 50 years. We have 4 chapters: Los Angeles, New York, Nashville, and Atlanta. And our main goal is essentially to educate independent music publishers and songwriters on what's going on in the music industry. And ultimately, easiest way to say it is we help people get their royalties. We help people understand how to get their money. And it's getting more and more complex every day. And yeah, a lot going on. So we pride ourselves in being a great resource for the independent artist, songwriter, publisher.
So specifically, how do you work for the independent artists? Because there's a lot of noise out there dealing with collecting these royalties, getting them distributed. How do you all specifically stick up for the indies?
Right. Yeah. So we make people aware of like what's going on, right? Like there is, we're not like a trade organization per se, because we can't technically lobby Congress, but we can go out and we're an educational group, right? So specifically, we do programming. Every chapter has its own programming. We did our global indie publishing summit in New York City last June. It was at the Lincoln Center at Juilliard there in Manhattan, and just programming all day. I did a seminar on AI, global rights, and what's happening at like the top level, how like what is happening with like copyright and how it pertains to artificial intelligence. In LA, we have our Grammy luncheon at Lowry's Steakhouse in Beverly Hills, and we have David Israelite from the NMPA come and give it a state of the music publishing business right there. And that's another big, and you're going to get the top level information, what's happening with all of the royalty rates, rate setting, legislation, copyright, new services that are popping up, anything like that's like really affecting the industry at like a high level. Coming to our programming is going to help keep you informed for that.
Awesome. And in terms of other resources, usually when I click around a website and I look at a job board, I expect to see careers for that specific company. So I expected to look on a job board and see career openings for the AIMP. But instead, I'm seeing openings from all over the music industry for jobs that, when I was younger, I probably would have jumped at the chance of taking some of these gigs to get my foot in the door in the music industry. So could you tell us a little bit about that job board?
Oh yeah, for anybody listening out there, so we have a job board, and everybody on our board, all the boards across, we're always, we're at big companies, independents, large companies, small companies, we're always hiring. And so when you look at a job board right there, just know someone in the AIMP organization had to post that. And you can go on like LinkedIn or just email us directly and be like, hey, I applied for this job. And instantly you are going to, get some attention on that. So it's kind of a hidden gem. We're very proud of it. And yeah, it's something that's out there because the music business can be very hard to break into. There's, and this is a great way to do that.
Now, I had a question for you as an indie artist myself, right? And Elise and I were actually talking about this offline. I see that you have chapters in Atlanta and Nashville, and what about for those of us who say might be in hypothetically Colorado or Texas?
Yeah.
How can we get involved?
Well, absolutely. So there's levels to your memberships, and we revamped this with our brand new website that unveiled earlier this year. So I would pick the city closest to what you live at, and it doesn't matter what part of the world you're in. You can just pick like New York, LA, Nashville, Atlanta. You get a national membership. So you when you sign up for the AIMP at the national level, you get access to all the chapters events.
Now, what kind of benefits and perks does this give to an independent artist? You do a lot of educational resources. Is there anything else that is provided?
Right. Yeah. So when you sign up as a member for the AIMP, you are now you are supporting the independent music community. You are supporting an organization that's 50 years old and like helping songwriters. And the direct perks are you're immediately plugged into a network of people who know exactly what they're talking about. Like, I don't know if you guys ever go on like LinkedIn, but it's the worst. Like, I can't believe what I'm seeing on that place. Like all these people writing stuff about royalties and this and that, and this is how much you get paid from Spotify. It's, no, don't. Like, go the AIMP. We all have lived this. I've been in music publishing now for 20 years. I have touched everything. I've worked with everybody. Like, I can tell you with certainty, like, this is how it is. And there's lots of people like myself who are just happy to share this knowledge. So, you know, the benefit of joining the AIMP is you get plugged into that network. Yeah. And you're also, you know, helping this organization continue educating folks on how to, you know, get their money.
Yeah. I'm fascinated. You mentioned that you've been part of music publishing for 20 years. I'm always interested in people's kind of origin stories. How did you get into music publishing in the first place? And being in it for so long, how did you manage to kind of keep your sea legs about you? Because the last 20 years have been wild vis-a-vis the technology and how music is distributed nowadays.
Absolutely. So I'll tell this story to anybody who'll listen. So I'm a musician. I'm a guitar player. I was in bands my whole life. I grew up in Seattle, right in the heels of all the grunge stuff. So I got in a band. We got pretty popular locally, and I moved to LA to make it. And my rock star ship sailed away without me. And I got an internship at a music publisher called Bug Music, which was incredible. It was owned by two brothers, and it was awesome. Like every incredible, just like punk rock band you can think of, they published. So like I'm on the phone with like the Dead Kennedys and like all this amazing stuff.
Sweet.
So how I got my job, and this is important. Like there was a big pile of CDs we had to mail. It was like 1,000 CDs. I mailed them all my first day as an intern. And the boss came in. He's like, "Who mailed those CDs?" I was like, "Me." He's like, "Upstairs." And he hired me on the spot.
Nice.
That's how I got in the music business. That was in the year 2005. And I got to tell you, like streaming hadn't come along yet, and illegal downloading had cratered the business. And people were like, "This is it. Like the sky is falling." To go from that to the streaming services, and just to see like the way mechanical licensing was done before the MLC came along, it was literally insane. You would just get giant boxes of paper called NOIs, which are notice of intent, and effectively said, "Hey, we're going to put your song out, and we're letting you know we're doing it. It's compulsory license, so we'll find you and pay you." It's just like, wait, what?
Trust us.
Yeah, how?
Right. So, you know, being able to kind of surf that and then see the MLC come into existence, which is incredible, by the way. I mean, and are you familiar? Like, you're both independent artists. Do you guys know what the MLC is? Are you
For
familiar?
those folks at home, you know, always worth repeating because I got to log in, but
So it's a mechanical licensing collective. And essentially what it is all the streaming royalties in the United States for digital flow through this government body, and it's free to sign up. Anybody can. And you as an artist or a songwriter, you need to go there, and that's how you get your Spotify mechanical royalties. It's that easy. Put in your songs, make sure they're there, and they send you checks.
Now,
all 3 cents of it.
all 0.03. One question that has actually come up to me through friends of mine in the industry, and I've had this question myself. If you use a distributor, say a DistroKid, a CD Baby, is the MLC still important, or is your distributor going to take care of that for you?
That's a fantastic question. So one thing that folks need to understand, there's different types of royalties out there. So when you sign up with like TuneCore or CD Baby or DistroKid or what have you, right? So they're going to take your song and they're going to put it in all the DSPs. And then you're going to get paid back what's called a master royalty or sound recording royalty. But attached to that, there's also a publishing royalty, a mechanical royalty, and there's also a performance royalty attached to that as well. So you need to sign up with a performance rights organization in the United States. This is kind of a hot topic right now, but I'll say there's quite a few. So ASCAP and BMI, anybody can sign up, right? There's All Track, which is an independent PRO. Anybody can sign up. And then there's CSAC and GMR, which are invite only. So that's, you just sign up with one of those, get your performance royalty. You need a publishing administrator to get your mechanical royalty. And then you need a distributor like CD Baby to get your sound recording royalty. That is the kind of the broad strokes of like what's out there to get. And getting a publishing administrator, again, if you're independent, there's lots of companies out there that you can kind of sign up for, and for a fee, they'll register your songs with the PROs and the MLC and just collect it and pay it back to you, so you don't have to do that work yourself. And I honestly think that's like the best way to go for like a lot of people, unless you're peddling in like the tens of millions of streams. Like you should be focusing on like growing your fan base. And then these companies typically have like pretty generous contracts. You can just sort of, you know, sign out when you get like an actual like real publisher to like take your songs, get you in the room with A&R people, pitch it for sync, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and I'd like to talk to you a little bit about sync licensing and how sync deals are structured, because this is a very hot topic that I feel like when I get on LinkedIn, I'm so glad you made fun of it. Nobody knows what they're talking about. Can you give us a little bit of explanation about how sync licensing work and how those deals are structured?
Absolutely. So in my previous tenure, I was the vice president of sync licensing at a company called Songs Music Publishing. So I was on the front line for every kind of flavor of synchronization license you can think of. So it's pretty straightforward, right? And like there's a company, a video game, a TV show, a movie, advertising agency. They want to use your song in their production. And synchronization simply means like the music is synchronized with the picture that's behind it. That's all it is. So that's the definition of a sync license. So there's two sides. You have to license the publishing side and the sound recording side. And where it gets really tricky is on, that's just most of the time, the record label will just flat out own the sound recording. It's not always the case, but most of the time it is. But with the songwriting side, you get many songwriters. And typically songwriters have, it's called the right of approval and approval right. And so if you have a song that has 5 songwriters, the production has to go to all 5 of those people and get approval. And then within that world of sync licensing, you negotiate. It's usually it's the same kind of like bucket of rights. You have territory, term, that's how long you want to use the song, what media it's going to be in, and then the dollar amount. Sometimes there are options, like I want it for America for this long, but if the movie does good, I want it for these other countries. So it can get pretty intricate, but for the most part, sound recording, publishing, here's what I need to use your song for, go. One last thing I'll say, and I'm gonna like give you guys, I'm gonna say, everybody listening right now, I'm gonna help you skip a lot of steps.
Ooh.
3 things. Sync boils down to 3 things. 1, having the connection with the person that uses the music. 2, having the right song. And 3, being easy to work with when it comes to licensing. That's it. That's the special sauce right there. The first one's the hardest.
So a question that's come up on the show before is, what happens if, say, Elisa and I write a song together and you want to sync it, and maybe we have a falling out, and just to be spiteful, I say no, but Elisa still wants to exploit the work. And I don't mean exploit in the negative term, I mean in the legal sense. Is that going to be a problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So that would just probably kill the use dead in the water. Except in certain cases, I don't think I can say names, but like there was a very big rock band where one guy flat out refused to say yes to any syncs, but the other 3 guys in his rock band said, we want to sync, and they sued him and won, and he lost the approval right. So that is
interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, if you need everybody's approval to use it.
Yeah, and there's this interesting thing in copyright law, right, about the right of exploitation, that if you own the copyright, you have the you have the right to exploit your work. And a question that gets posed a lot is, does this mean that people should avoid writing with other people to avoid the situation? How common is this, Frank?
Not very common. I mean, people are very happy to get sync licenses. You know, your publisher, your label will call you, hey, guess what? They want to use your song on a TV show. Yes. I have seen, and this isn't a thing, it's really gone away, but in the past, I would see a lot of very notable artists refuse to license their music, and it would drive the publisher crazy because we just gave a huge advance to you. And you're like,
Prince.
I'm not going to put my song on Glee. You know what? I don't like violence, so I don't want my song on Grand Theft Auto. Like all these things. But that one's a little more understandable, I guess. But yeah. So it comes down to this approval right, and that is it's a really powerful thing that artists and songwriters have to like leverage the value of their copyrights.
Now, one of the big points you talked about at the beginning of that is getting in contact or having that relationship with whoever's making. Let's just use video games because that's a medium I love.
Yeah.
How do independent artists get in touch? Maybe let's set GTA to the side. An independent publisher. If I wanted a smaller publisher to be aware of my music, what's the best way for an artist to make that happen?
Right. I mean, look, there's a couple of different ways to go about it. I mean, look, number one, great music always finds its way out. If you have a great song, your phone's going to start ringing. That's just how it goes. Now, in terms of like breaking in and meeting like the editors and the music supervisors and like the heads of music and stuff, it's tough, right? Because those people are hammered with people every day. I would recommend trying to find in-person mixers like the AIMP. We just did a sync event a few weeks ago where we had people play their music for music supervisors. Just did their day. Concord Records. Yeah. That's a great way to make a connection and just be cool and good music and don't blow up someone's email. Because I guarantee you, I know for a fact, because I used to own a music pitching company, these people just delete the songs as fast as they can. So you have to make a real connection and you have to be patient and you have to have great music. I mean, that's what it is. I had a friend who was a music supervisor and I asked him, I'm like, how do you place music? He's like, you just have to know me. Because there has to be a lot of trust too, right? Because these are legal transactions and I can't tell you, I mean, how many times people get burned. Like, yeah, I own 100% of the publishing. Wrong. Then it gets on, I don't know, a Target commercial and you've got a real problem. So I've seen that kind of stuff happen too. I've seen uncleared samples get into like Cosmopolitan TV commercials.
No.
So when these music supervisors are they're essentially vouching for you by placing your song. So trust is huge. But there's no magic way. I mean, another way too is just like look around at who you're working with right now, and those people who are like coming up through the ranks, just stay close with them because eventually they're going to be the ones at the top. Like I have a friend, known the guy like 20 years, and now he's like one of the top music supervisors. Just what it is, It's like just know people who just don't burn bridges on the way up.
Yeah, that is so important because you never know that person that you talk to at the party that you maybe don't think has anything to offer. Turns out in a couple of years, they might be in a position to help you out.
There was an intern. He was the nicest kid ever. And like nobody took time to learn his name. And I was like really cool to him and answer questions. And now he's like producing like, megastars. And it's like, oh, I'm so happy for you.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned that is so important. I think it's super key to, if you are going to take these kind of important steps and, approach music supervisors and everything, you should really get your ducks in a row in writing and have these contracts sorted out, as I'm sure Ryan has expounded over weeks and weeks on this show, to get your ducks in a row and have those difficult conversations with your fellow musicians, with your fellow songwriters, before things potentially blow up in a good way.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can speak to that too. Like on one hand, I was in a band and got a Victoria's Secrets commercial. Yeah.
Sweet.
Here's a guitar amp. Wait, what? And I'm going to keep the $30,000. It was actually the singer in our band was in this other band and he had a brand new Fender Twin. He's like, yeah, we got a TV commercial, but I got a guitar amp. All that's to say, look, I mean, go into the room, write songs, but don't go in like hung up on this like publishing splits thing. Everybody know what you did. You know what I'm saying? Like most of the time it's a collaborative effort and just you chill with it. There's always more songs you can write. what I see a lot of, and this is more in like the pop world and like hip hop music, is just people that are in the room suddenly think they're owed publishing points. And that is where things get really
Mm.
sticky. It's like, dude, you didn't do anything there. So, yeah, get your ducks in a row, but also, don't start creating music. I mean, if you're like creating music because it's your passion, don't get hung up on the commerce part of it. I mean, there's a lot of people who write, composers. That is the whole thing, is commerce, but there's still that creative touch.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting because I love that you have so many resources available, but I also find myself sometimes as a musician and as a songwriter, especially the way that the world works nowadays, where I could just have my DAW here and I don't have to rent out a studio and have a bunch of folks around me. It can be very isolating. And because of that, it's like you don't know what you don't know until you start taking those steps. And I'm kind of wondering when you have chapter meetings and these awesome like global summits and everything, which by the way, there might be some replays of some videos of some sessions on that website. Your website has a lot of resources.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
realizing that are not gated. Please, people, take advantage. What do you find when it comes to musicians or indie publishers or songwriters is like the thing that kind of comes up the most in terms of like blank spots or things that you kind of wish that more people knew about?
Right. Honestly, it's just taking the steps to get your money from the MLC, registering your songs with ASCAP, PMI, or whatever other PRO. Like, those are the fundamental basic steps you need to do, is just getting that in. Yeah. And then like just understanding what that means, like, and I can't stress that importance enough. I mean, I've seen people with like millions and millions of songs, like, dude, go do this right now.
Because you never know how much money you could potentially be leaving on the table.
Right. And then, the law, the Music Modernization Act, this isn't really hard and fast rule, but it is part of the law. After 3 years, if it's not claimed, then they'll pay it out by market share. So it's really important to go get your songs registered and claimed right now. I mean, they're holding about $1 billion in the black box for people that don't know how to pay.
What?
No, yeah, you can go read about it. And, yeah, so they have money for you and they want to pay you. They're working as hard as they can to pay you. You just have to go and just claim the songs and put your registrations in.
Go get your money, y'all.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Now, as we're getting close to our time here, I gotta ask: how do people sign up? Is there a fee? What does it take to become a part of AIMP?
Oh, right. So we've got different levels of membership. National, I think it's 125 per year. And then there's another slot beneath that, which is 60. Then there's the student, which is 20. But you only get into the events or the discounted events with the national. And I would encourage people to kind of go towards that. The other ones are just online for the webinars and access. Well, we do have a lot of content up front. We have like literally 30 years of webinars on our page. I mean, it's a whole library. You can nerd out as hard as you can on music publishing. I mean, we've taught, everything, all the programming forever from the brightest minds in the business.
Publishing university practically in there.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and one thing that really caught my eye as I was diving through sort of your back catalog is there's a whole lecture on live royalties and how to collect and the importance of collecting your live royalties. Can you give us about a 1 to 2 minute sort of summation of how important that is and how to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So performing rights organizations around the world will pay you if you play a live concert. It's really simple. You just take your set list and you, as a songwriter, turn it into your PRO.
Huh.
That's it. Yeah. And nobody does it. I did it. It worked. I got my like $12 from playing the Viper Room. Like, I'm telling you, just do it.
Literally the first I've heard of this.
So,
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. So you play shows at a venue, take your set list, go to ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, All Track, whoever you're with, and you fill out, turn it in, and they will pay you.
and I wanted Frank to say that because I've been doing this for years. It's literally that easy. I'm on ASCAP and there is a link that's like, and it lets you save set lists. So I had like, in the height of my Zach Sloan band days, we had a 3-hour show, we had a 2-hour show. and you could copy and paste. And I made darn sure that every original song that I felt good about performing, I performed because I got paid for it. And then also every time I played Born to Run, I knew that those royalties were going out to the needy Bruce Springsteen, who just wasn't getting his due. Yet.
Small indie artist Bruce Springsteen.
But it's a really
on that one.
Yeah, it's a really easy but a really good way to make yourself some money that you are owed.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Yeah,
Frank, we've got about 2 minutes left here, so I got to ask you our big last question of the day. Oh wait, did you have one more, Elisa?
No.
Okay.
I just get excited about this question because there's always some good nugget in there.
Yeah, last time I hosted, I forgot to ask this, and producer Lauren saved me. So thank you, producer Lauren. Didn't forget this time. Frank, do you have any last tips for indie creators to help move their careers forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is if you're making music, just authenticity is paramount right now. With AI flooding you have to be yourself, speak your voice. If you're out there if you go to a networking event, don't try and get every business card in the room. Meet one or two people and forge a real connection. And like the last thing, like I said earlier, look around at whoever you're like in this with and just hang on to those people, because I'm telling you, all ships rise with the tide. And you're going to wake up 20 years later like me with gray hair and be really happy you have the friends you have.
Awesome.
Well, I want to say a sincere thank you to Frank Handy from the president and national chair of AIMP. I also want to give a big thanks to Elisa Rockdock for coming and hanging out with us. Ladies and gentlemen, hope this has been a great episode for you. We've had a blast. Thanks for listening to Break the Business.
Thanks, guys.
Break the